Hey guys, I'm Randy Younger, and this is another episode of Under the Radar, where we talk all things film. And with me tonight, my two film critics this evening, we've got Pete Ayala. How's it going, man? Been a while.
What's going on? What's going on? Good to be here.
Good to see you again. Also, a show regular, Matt Roren. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello.
And as always, I like to start off with what we're watching these days, this week. Pete, it's been a few months, so what have you been watching? What have you been binging?
So funny enough, super late to the party, but got into The Crown, and I am sad that it took me this long. I looked at it and thought it was just going to be way too much of a dramatic show, but as Randy knows, and Matt, I'm a teacher. I taught social studies for the last 3 years before I moved into technology education, which I teach now. So I'm a bit of a history buff, not a humongous history buff, but my wife sold me on it like, no, there's a lot of historical stuff that's going on. I think you'll really enjoy it. And it turns out I did. There was enough of it to keep me on the hook for a while, but the acting is fantastic. Like I felt bad that I took this long to give it a chance. Obviously just shot through all 4 of the seasons, and now I have to sit around and wait for 5 and 6. But both queens, Claire Foy and I can't remember her name from Broadchurch, the other chick that played her in the 3rd and 4th season, both are phenomenal. The first
Olivia.
Olivia, tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, her. And then, obviously, if anybody's like a Doctor Who fan, one of the Doctor Who's plays Prince Philip in the first.
Yeah, Matt Smith. Yeah,
Matt Smith. He's great in the first 2 seasons, and then the guy who plays him in the second 2 seasons. I should have came here prepared with some names. He's also
honestly, this is me every episode. I'm like, that guy,
But he's great. He was on AMC's first season of The Terror, where they're on the
so good.
So good. He's great. So to see him do this kind of change from being, it was just regardless. And then Helena Bonham Carter coming in the 3rd season. She's amazing in everything she does. And she nails it as Princess Margaret. And then, of course, having my very first crush from X-Files, Gillian Anderson. You knew who it was, Matt. As soon as I said my first crush, Matt
there
was
she is right here, right behind me.
Yep, there you go. There she is.
Right behind me.
There she is. Absolutely. So seeing her come in.
My whole thing was how weird it was that I'm like, why am I so attracted to Margaret Thatcher?
All I kept thinking about was exactly that, because obviously it's Margaret Thatcher. And all I could think of was like Austin Powers trying to keep himself from getting too excited. Margaret Thatcher naked on a cold day. And I'm like,
Gillian Anderson, like, you can't do this to me. Like,
yeah. Right. So she was fantastic, obviously.
So good.
She absolutely nails Margaret Thatcher. Like, if you've ever seen any archival stuff of her, like, they just did their homework, these people, and got me interested in characters that I would never care about otherwise.
I did so much. Like, it's like the royal family, something I've never given a crap about.
Same.
And watching this show had me reading so much about the royal family. I was like, damn, I gotta do research.
Yeah, and it was great because Amanda had already watched it. So every time I got to a point like that and I was like, I got to look that up. She's like, I've already looked it up. What do you want to know? And she's just telling me everything as it's going on. So it was really, really, a great show. I really enjoyed it. I'm upset that it's over now and I got to wait for the next 2 seasons. But we also just started the Expanse on Prime. And looks pretty good. It was a hard sell to my wife. The first episode was pretty slow, and she's not big on sci-fi, but the second episode looks to be picking up a little bit. So we'll see how that goes.
That's science fiction, right? That The Expanse. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's about it's just about how we've now moved on to Mars, and now we're out in the outer belt, and we're looking for resources, and you kind of have this working class that's not respected by either of the planets now. And it's I mean, obviously it's hitting very close to home of just our inequality in pay and things like that are going on here in this country, and it just kind of does it on a grander scale. So I enjoy when you do sci-fi stuff to get the nerd in me in, but then you have an actual message that's something that is mirroring what's going on right now. So I thought it was a really good idea. I'm looking forward to really getting into it, and I'll watch anything with Thomas Jane. So I'm game.
Pete, you're definitely selling these two shows to me. No, you
Right.
really are. I was just attracted to The Crown because Hans Zimmer did the theme. But,
which is what I told you, right? Remember, I told you I was watching the first season and I kept texting Randy. I was like, dude, Zimmer kills it every time, but man, is he killing it on this one.
Pretty much.
It's so funny how I got into The Crown and was like, I fell asleep watching Walking Dead. And
which will happen.
It ended and The Crown started playing.
Oh, okay.
And I woke up in the middle of the first episode and I'm like, whoa, they're really getting far back on these flashbacks of Walking Dead. I'm like, this is obviously in England? And I was like, what? I was so confused. And then I started watching it and I was like, oh, okay, I'm watching something else. Right. And then I was tired and I was like, oh, what kind of watch I can fall asleep to? And I'm like, yeah, I'll just watch The Crown. And I ended up getting really into it and could not sleep. Yeah. And was damn, this is really good. Nice. And that was around the time that I guess season 3 had just finished. So I just watched season 4 when it came out. The second it came out, I watched it in a day. I was just but yeah, it's that wait. But yeah, I couldn't believe how much I liked the show.
No, now I can now. I mean, back then when I started, I was like, and she was like, just give it a shot, dude.
Yeah.
I said, all right. And I think the way she got me in on the first season was Lithgow playing Winston Churchill. And I thought that's going to be weird because I just watched Gary Oldman knock it out of the park as Churchill. Yeah. And then, but he does it, but this is different because it's episodal, it's a longer form. Gary Oldman's good for that one quick punch, 2.5 hours, whatever, and you're done. But Lithgow is a guy that you want to watch continue on. And you know how the Brits are when it comes to putting American actors in British roles. They're not big on that, right? Even Harry Potter was just no Americans, right? So, and I get it. I get why they do that. But Lithgow is, obviously a trained actor, stage, screen. He's done everything. Gillian Anderson's another one, even though she's kind of
she's been in British shows like crazy lately.
Right, she's a half and half, right? She's done a bunch of stuff over there. She's done a bunch of stuff over here. So now it's just, I couldn't talk about it enough. I feel so weird talking about how great it is now when people are like, yeah, shut up. The show's been out for 3 years. We know. And it's but still, it's fantastic, and I think everybody should give it a watch.
And that's on Netflix, right?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, and there's 2 more seasons, and the cast changes. I mean, if you don't know, the cast changes every 2 seasons. To show the
older.
To show the older in time. And now I can't remember her name either, but she's in a Harry Potter movie where she plays the temporary headmaster of the school. She's such an evil. She's the worst in Harry Potter, and so she comes in the 4th or 5th movie, and she's going to be the queen, ending out the season ending out the show for the last 2 seasons. And I'm like, that's going to be interesting. So
but the season that they ended on was Princess Diana, right?
Yeah. Yes, and she's very much. I mean, spoiler alert: she dies. Right? Everybody knows that.
Right.
Not to be insensitive, but I mean, obviously she does. But she's very much alive through the season. That's not, so it's
it's a really interesting season too.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, does she die at the end of the season? I was like, no, actually she doesn't. She's still around, which is, so I'm very interested to see how that's going to pick up in the 5th season, because they do change the casting. Are they going to recast her, or are they just going to do a time jump to after she's passed away? So
now here's a question for you, Pete, because you're a teacher. Would you ever show clips of this show to your students?
Yes, I would.
Cool.
I really enjoyed the apartheid episode. it's weird to say I enjoyed the apart. I thought they did a really good
It's not
job
really
on the
cool.
apartheid episode. Um, some of the things that are going on after World War II, kind of the reconstructing of England, that the fighting between the Labor Party and the Conservatives, I thought was really cool, and because it mirrors a lot of the things like, America. Obviously, we've caught up to England in terms of industrial revolution over there. Then about 40, 50 years later, it starts here, like really starts here, and then everything else starts to tighten up. Like we end up being like 40 years behind them in certain things, and then 30 and 20, and we get closer and closer and closer. So everything from like abolishing slavery to where we are now, and the difference between the working class party and the blue collar party, we're a lot tighter now. So there would be some really cool things to show, and then obviously there are some tie-ins with the United States and things like that. Obviously, there's a JFK and Jackie O episode, which is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
it's an incredible episode.
Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like the act. Like JFK was, it was Dexter. What's his name?
Yeah,
Um,
Michael C. Hall, and you're like, that's who you picked? Yeah, it's like they're so good at casting, and that was who they picked.
exactly. But when you see why, I don't want to give it away, but when you see why they picked him,
Yeah,
it's perfect, and you'll see what I mean, because it's not your traditional JFK, being this beacon of hope. It's kind of like a little bit of the underbelly of things, and it's really kind of focusing on Jackie O, which is crazy because she's definitely a big foreshadowing of what's going to come with Diana later, which is weird because this isn't a story, this is something that happened, but it's very cool. So yeah, like I can't give this show enough credit. I feel
the writing is just so good.
It is, and I just feel so horrible for being such a cranky pants for so long.
And I hate people. People are always complaining like, well, that part was fictionalized slightly because, and it's like, it's a show. Like,
yeah.
it's like, it's not a documentary.
Right.
No, it's there to entertain,
Yeah.
but it also does inform. It's
They
like,
take some liberties.
yeah,
and it has to, right? Because this is a show that they didn't authorize. Everybody hates it, apparently. Like, the royal family hates it. All the people whose families are involved do not like what it's doing. That it's opening up the Pandora's box on certain things. So, and now that, I mean, they're in the limelight right now, right? The Jeffrey Epstein thing with the one prince, they were connected. So like that's a whole nother thing. Like apparently that's something that's going on right now. She's about to have some birthday to Queen or something, and she's not going to have one of her sons there because of the whole Epstein thing. So it's like, and that's the stuff they talk about the whole time. So like when you think about, ooh, that's a weird relationship for him to have, to have a relationship with a person that's so infamous like that. It's like, no, it's not. It's pretty much par for the course with these people. So
right. It's like, oh, they had an uncle who was friends with Hitler, so
exactly. You know what I mean? And there's another one, like the whole, the Nazi sympathizers and stuff, that history within their family.
yeah.
Just really, it's really, really interesting show. And it's
Pretty much you name it, they did it.
Exactly.
Oh, all right.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Exactly. They've run the gamut of everything a family like that could do with power and money and influence.
I'm probably
It's surprising this wasn't like a hit soap opera, in the 80s.
Because they would have nailed that too.
It's basically the story of Dallas, except with royals, which is like insane.
Pretty much the same. Yeah, royal money, royal family.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
For sure. Randy's going to watch it as soon as we're done.
I am going to play the first episode right after the show. Definitely.
Great. It's
just
great.
don't think there's going to be zombies because there
Right. Damn it.
aren't.
Well, Matt, I just wanted to ask you what you're watching. I know you're very active with your movie watching and TV shows. So what's fresh?
Well, let's see. I just finished the full series of It's Gary Shandling Show.
Oh my God.
So I closed off that one.
Yes.
And then I am still in the middle of my forever long complete Disney journey. I'm now at the tail end of 1989. Just finished watching Rescue Rangers season 2. I'm in the middle of watching the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh season 2. I will be watching Muppet Babies season 6 after this. So I'm right about there in my all things, Disney Muppets.
And with Rescue Rangers, aren't they coming out with? Is it live action or is it animated?
I think it's a mixture. I think it's like what they did with the Chipmunk movies.
Monks, yeah.
Oh, okay, like one of the CGI'd characters.
Which it was funny because it also made me realize, because I've been watching these shows and I was like, oh, like Rescue Rangers is the only one of these like Disney afternoon shows that actually has them in the same universe as humans. All the other ones, like it's like DuckTales. It's like, which I still don't understand why it's called Duckburg, being that it's like mostly dog people.
Right,
it's
right.
like mostly goofy. Like everyone except for the immediate family are ducks, but yet it's called Duckburg.
Because it's the richest guy in town, right?
I guess. Yes. All the rich people are ducks.
Yeah.
So, so wasn't there overlap though between there was Launchpad was in Tailspin?
No, he was in Darkwing Duck.
But wasn't there a character who was in 2 Duck series? I think
the Launchpad was in both those.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and then Tailspin is like obviously just a Jungle Book world where all the animals are like whatever, and Shere Khan's like a businessman and all that nonsense. But yeah, like it's weird that like, oh yeah, Rescue Rangers is the only one of these where it's like they are just mice and chipmunks and rats and whatever living amongst humans.
Right.
No,
it's like the Rescuers.
Yeah.
Like
or an American Tail.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, American Tail. Yeah. Right.
It's like, yeah, they do that with rodents all the time. Like rodents never get their own world. They're always part of our world.
Because you could always make them, you could easily insert them, right?
Yeah.
Another one from the late 80s. What the it was a Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, Great Mouse Detective.
Yes, thank you. That was awesome.
Yes, I it's so funny. I'm like, I just rewatched that, but it's like I have a feeling that I've probably watched it like every 6 months since it came out on Blu-ray.
Nice.
It's like, because it was like I saw it when it came out, and then I didn't see it again for like I guess until the Blu-ray came out, and like now I've seen it like I don't even know how many, between like my kids watching it, me watching it. I watched it once with my girlfriend. Like it's like
Awesome.
it's great. Vincent Price.
I gotta revisit it.
Yeah.
But all this content, it's not on Disney Plus, right?
Well, Rescue Rangers is, the Winnie the Pooh is.
Okay. Rescue Rangers is okay.
I also just finished the Growing Pains spinoff, Just the 10 of Us. I finished all 3 seasons of that, which is not anywhere. I have bootleg DVDs for that. We recorded off of the USA Network in the 90s.
Awesome.
And it's great because it'll have at the end, it'll be like, I'm Gilbert Gottfried. I'm up all night this weekend. We'll be showing Toxic Avenger 2 and 3.
You don't want to miss it.
But yeah, I mean, they're starting to put more of it on the site though, on the network, the streaming platform.
Okay, good.
Like they seem to be adding stuff slowly on there, but
I think there's just
they started with such a crazy amount of content.
Right. I think there's just so many things out there that other people own. They still have a little piece of it, but like I remember Gummy Bears popped up on it. I was like, Gummy Bears, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then we watched it and I was like, all right, I'm good now. But DuckTales I loved, and Darkwing Duck, and like all of those that were our afternoon when we were kids.
Yeah.
Disney
Coming
afternoon.
home from school to watch.
Oh, the best. I think one of my favorites actually, it was a little bit later on, Quack Pack. Quack Pack. It was like a spin-off of DuckTales.
Yeah.
That I have not watched that yet. I haven't. I didn't see it when it was out. I kind of aged out of the Disney afternoon when Goof Troop started.
Yep.
So it's like I didn't really watch Goof Troop.
How old are you, Matt? 40?
I'm 42. I just turned 42. Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I just turned 42.
I know. I'll turn 41 in August, so I was like, you and me are we aged out at the same time. I remember the group was it for me. That was like the last new show that they
it was like I remember when it started, but I don't think I actually really watched it.
Yeah.
Like I have vague memories of it, and I've seen it since because like my ex-wife was like a big fan, so I like watched the Goofy movie with her and stuff. So
yeah, the Goofy movie. Yeah.
And I'm the baby here at 35.
Yeah.
And one of the last Disney afternoons I remember, the Mighty Ducks, which actually was a really good ripoff of the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I only know that it exists as a TV show because of my quest.
Mm-hmm. It's entertaining. I recommend it if you're curious.
Well, you know, I'm watching everything, so I'll eventually see it. It's on my list.
Do it.
But it was like so funny because I was like, "What? They had a show?" I was like huh?
It was like 1996 or 7.
But they were like crime-fighting hockey players, right?
Yeah, they had the same logo as the real team, so there was some promotion there. But yeah, it was just your generic, alien ducks fighting super, these aliens coming to Earth, and it was very generic, but it was pretty good. All right, guys. So, and also I wanted to backtrack with you, Matt. It's Gary Shandling show, amazing.
Oh yeah, no, we can't not talk.
We need a few minutes on this.
I was like, whoa, you can't drop that and then go Disney and then just like, screw Gary.
Well, I feel like
Shandling.
That's like one of those things. Like now that you're here, because I feel like I talked to Randy about this every couple weeks when I had just finished watching season 1, 2, 3, and so on.
It's great. It broke boundaries in television for sure. Breaking the fourth wall and all that fun stuff. But I'll tell you what I prefer. I think it's a little bit of a smarter show, the Larry Sanders Show.
Well, yeah.
It
was like the next step.
Yeah. And you recently watched the 25th anniversary special, right?
I had no idea it existed before you, Matt, and I'm so grateful for that.
I'm glad I could turn you on to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that thing halfway between both.
It was odd, man. It was very weird seeing it because, like, is this like a prequel to the Larry Sanders show?
Yeah, it was before Larry. It was even, I think, before Gary Shandling show was on.
Okay, or around that same time, it seemed.
It was around the same time
because his sidekick was on Gary Shandling.
the guy who owns the complex or runs the complex.
Yeah.
But Pete.
And what's even interesting, more interesting, a few years prior to that, I think Shandling guest hosted for Johnny Carson a few times.
Actually, I just watched the opening monologue I found.
Cool.
From like the second night
I've seen clips of some of his appearances, but I want to see an actual episode of him.
I know. I wanted to see the whole thing, but all I could find was the monologue.
That's cool.
But it's super interesting, like and it's so weird too. At that time, Carson was on forever, and he always had these guest hosts. And like I grew up watching Carson, and I remember seeing obviously Leno host for him, Joan Rivers a whole lot,
right?
But it's like I don't remember Gary Shandling hosting. I wish I did. It was around the same time I watched the show.
He was in that group.
Gary Shandling.
He was in that group with Joan Rivers. I remember. Yeah. They were like tag teaming it for a while, I think.
But yeah, I watched the It's Gary Shandling show like on Showtime when it was new.
Fox, when they started out, they were just so, unapologetic about everything that they did, from Married with Children to Shandling to Ben Stiller, like all the things that they Tracy Ullman. Yeah,
well, they were really just trying to,
they were just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it would stick.
Yeah, I mean, they had nothing to lose. It was like seriously, like Rupert Murdoch came in and was like, "Why are there only 3 major networks? I'm coming in and I'm he became an American citizen just so he could own Fox Network, and
that's crazy.
And and he just changed the game. He really did.
Yeah, because I mean, it's still the only it's still really only four, because if you look at the other two larger networks, they've had so much change in
Yeah.
that time. And even though I know that Fox Pictures had been picked up by Disney or whatever, you still have Fox. You have the whole other part of Fox.
And it's weird how they've definitely like matured a lot over the years, but they're still looked at as like the dick little brother.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, they're the only, and they made primetime. I mean, even though like the Flintstones was primetime TV, but like they definitely made primetime animation like
a thing,
a normal thing.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Where it's like now other channels from time to time, they usually cancel them after a season. Right. But they've stuck to having that Sunday night block for a long time.
Yeah. There's no South Park or Rick and Morty or any of that stuff if there isn't The Simpsons. It was a smart show. It still is a smart show. Oh, yeah. Just everything Fox did back then, even though things got constantly canceled. Chris Elliott had that show for a while where it was like,
Get a Life.
Get a Life.
Love it. So good.
They were just giving everybody a chance.
And they tried everything. They even had sketch comedy. They had The Edge.
Yeah, they had The Edge. They had
Wayne Knight and Jennifer Aniston, Tom Kenny. Incredible cast. Like some of the funniest, strangest, weird group of people. Julie Brown, it was like, wow, this is insane. And that was of course, one season. That there's so many shows on Fox that were just that one season. And then Get Married with Children and The Simpsons ran forever. X-Files ran forever. I mean, X-Files changed the game too. Right. I mean, X-Files really, there wasn't any science fiction acceptable.
Exactly. There wasn't anything like that since Star Trek.
They just really helped change the format of television in the 90s.
You should just have an episode, Randy, just talking about Fox TV, because
I think this is it right now. But
I
just want to switch gears a bit. I know you guys mentioned what you're watching now, but I'm actually in preparation for a show that we're doing hopefully later this week. It's dedicated to Ernest P. Worrell, more specifically Jim Varney. So for the past few weeks, I have pretty much been trying to watch every single Ernest film and TV appearance. I even rewatched Beverly Hillbillies the other day. So I'm excited to talk more about that at a later date. So I just wanted to give a little teaser for that.
Which Ernest is part of my journey, my Disney journey too.
Really?
Because, of course, Disney put out
movies. There's 10 movies.
Yes, Disney put out Ernest Goes to Camp. Ernest Goes to Jail, I believe.
Best one, I think.
Which are the best three.
Yeah.
That, Saves Christmas, and Jail.
I'll tell you though, Slam Dunk Ernest wasn't so terrible. So
I mean, I'm gonna talk about this on the Ernest show, but I just want to mention the funniest thing to me about Slam Dunk Ernest is the fact that it's a decent concept for a movie, which is why they remade it and called it Like Mike, starring Little Bow Wow.
You're right. That's funny.
When that movie came out, I'm watching it and I'm like, holy shit, this movie is just Slam Dunk Ernest.
Oh. Ernest did it first, so that's all we have to know.
Seriously, Magic Michael Jordan shoes? I'm sorry, that's Ernest.
Yeah.
Do they squeaking like Mike? Like they made that those chipmunk sounds?
I don't think so. No. They weren't. It definitely wasn't as good as Slam Dunk Ernest, which is sad. But I watched all the pre-camp stuff too. I watched, is Dr. Otto
I couldn't. I lasted like 20 minutes. I had to shut it. It was ridiculous.
Insane. And then I watched both of his collections of commercials. Okay. Where it was every single Burger King commercial he did and local things and whatever.
Save this. This is good ammunition for the next show. Save it. I love it. I love it.
Under the Radar is brought to you by Magnitude Jewelry. Add a 2 to match your attitude. Patent pending, interchange genuine gemstone and crystal EMF protection jewelry. For more information, please visit magnitudejewelry.com/gemgirl or call 718-268-6635.
Really switching gears here, but our first movie review tonight, The Rhythm Section. It's a movie that came out earlier last year, and it stars Blake Lively as a young woman who loses her entire family basically in a plane crash, and she finds out that it might be terrorism, and she basically goes on a quest of revenge on vengeance against these terrorists and anyone involved with the plot. And Jude Law is in it. He plays an ex MI6 agent who kind of like trains her, and Sterling K. Brown is in it. And this was actually better than I thought it would be. It had some really good action sequences, one of which was this car chase scene, and just the direction in that scene was phenomenal. And I think Blake Lively, I've never really seen her in anything except a few episodes of Gossip Girl. I always thought she was just kind of like this.
She's the one that's in Green Lantern, right?
Yeah, with her.
I think that's the only thing I've seen her in.
With her husband, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And yeah, she actually surprised me. I thought she was just a pretty face at first, but she carried this movie very, very well. She kind of kicked ass too. And it was a very complex character, a lot of layers, and very depressing premise, but the action sequences were really well done, great acting and direction. So I was pretty surprised by this one. Pete, what did you think of the Rhythm Section? Uh-oh.
I'm so sorry that you said all the things you said, because I'm going to disagree with almost all of them.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. I thought it was the first thing I told Amanda when I got done, because she was like, "I'm not." My wife doesn't. She dislikes Blake Lively just as much as I do. And again, I try to not bring that into the. You know me. I try to be as impartial as I can when I go into things. And I'm like, even though I don't like her acting, I don't like the project she picks, and I still don't know why Ryan Reynolds would leave Scarlett Johansson. And
I mean, that I do not understand.
That enough. That is alone for me enough. I mean, good for Colin Jost, a good Staten Island boy like myself. He picked her up. Good for him. But other than that, I really tried to go, and I was like, well, Jude Law's in it, and Sterling K. Brown's in it, and I'll give it a fair shot. And I felt like this is one of those movies that got Frankenstein together. Like they didn't know, yeah, and like they didn't know exactly where they wanted to go with the script, and they just kept adding, like, what would they do in a Bourne movie, or what would they do in a Bond movie, and they just kept adding those things on. So first of all, it starts off with her horrible English accent, which I'm like, Jesus, why didn't you just change it to an American story and just make her American, just make her herself? Like, I felt like this was her thing. It just felt like a vanity project at that point. Like, I want to do something where I can do an English accent and I can be, this broken soul and go on this journey. But the beginning of it seems so cool because she's in such dire straits, and you're like, wow, this is really super dark. And then it just kind of, you lose the whole illusion when she goes on this quest, as you said. And then Jude Law's got to like train her. Like I looked at Jude Law and I was like, oh, so he's like what's his name from Captain Marvel, and this story has just as much direction as Captain Marvel did, where it is none. Like it's going and it's going to get somewhere. And then the twist that's at the end, and I'm not going to say it, is not a twist. Like if you were just paying attention, you knew right off the bat, oh, that's what's going to happen. and then it does, and it's so unsatisfying. But and I'm sorry, like again, people can just see things in different lights, and I just saw it as one bad directional decision after another, where they just kept trying to pick up these tropes from other action films that they think will work. And I feel like at no time did the movie know what it was. Is it supposed to be this dark, gritty thing, or is it this supposed to be this Liam Neeson, I have a special set of skills and I'm going to come for you thing? Like you can't be both. You really can't be both. Like you can't be Traffic or something like that, and then also be the Bourne Identity. It just doesn't work. So that's my take on it. I think it was a paycheck for most of the big names, like Sterling and Jude. I think it was just like, all right, something to keep the lights on for a while. And it was sad. These are good actors that you're right. The acting is like Jude Law plays his part well, but it's Jude Law. Jude Law doesn't suck at what he does.
Right.
He's given sucky stuff, but he doesn't suck at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, Brown is kind of like that same, that kind of calm, demeanor, like this is us guy. You know what I mean? Like
it's also how I feel like he was in The Predator.
Yeah, but in The Predator, even more jokey because he's trying to be funny and quippy, and he's not.
And
like,
I was like, this is like,
it's the same persona.
I was like, I don't know why you're in this movie.
Yeah, but he dialed it back to a more serious place. And it was like, well, good, but it's like nothing is a surprise. Everything's very predictable, and I was like, when it was over, I was like, well, that was a thing, and that was it. And like, I want to call Ryan Reynolds and be like, you always talk about how much you love this woman. Why did you let her take this and go in this direction? Like, you could have stepped in. You're a producer. You're a director. You've done great things. That Buried Alive movie that he did that everybody was like, it sucked. I was like, you try and make a movie in a box for an hour and a half. You see how hard that is. It's like, I thought he did a great job at that. I thought that of just him on a phone buried underground was better than this, where you could tell they went to France, they went to the Middle East, they went to all these places. The cinematography is great. Like all of these things, you have this recipe for such a good film, and then because of the direction and then even some of the editing, I was just like, it's just wonky, and it just looks like maybe a team came in and did the beginning, like took all the shots, filmed everything, and then a completely different team with a different idea of what this should look like when it was done picked it up. And you could feel that now that we know what that looks like, you can feel it, and I felt it with this, and maybe I'm way off.
I think it had a pretty good flow to it. I didn't think it was Frankensteined, but I think it looked good. I think all the elements were in place. I think it worked really well as an action thriller. It's not
my positive. Here's my positive. I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay,
you were absolutely right though about the car scene.
Yeah,
the chase scene. That's one thing I did like. And then the other thing that I did like was, even though, again, a lot of her fights and stuff seemed pretty predictable, they were the way they were going to go. They kept her vulnerable, so she got her ass kicked in situations where she should have gotten her ass kicked,
right,
instead of just winning every fight. So I did appreciate that.
They gave her some humanity, and I think it really, really worked in her favor. Matt, I'm curious, what did you think?
So I'm going to be this crazy bridge here between you guys and say that I saw this movie in the theater in January when it came out, and I liked it. I thought visually it was good. I liked the acting and all that. That being said, a year later, I did not remember this movie at all.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
It is not memorable at all. Rewatching it, I because obviously I had to rewatch it because I literally remembered almost nothing of the plot. And which is like strongly goes towards what you're saying about,
there's no plot to remember.
It's like, yeah, like it's a good thing, it's got some nice visuals and whatever, but like the plot is not that memorable.
That probably would have changed my outlook on it a lot.
Okay.
And I firmly believe that. Like, there's certain things, I don't care if you got an 80-inch screen in your house, doesn't matter. You got to see it in the theater. You got to see it with other people. You got to jump. You got to feel that, right?
Yeah.
But this was just like, even I think even with that, like that might have helped it, but it just, there's no way it was going to save it. Like, it's just the plot. It's too many things. It's at first, it's like, this is the story. She loses her family, but then it jumps over to this whole espionage about something that has nothing to do with her. And at that point, she could have just said, you know what? This is above my pay grade, instead of making it all about her. And the people that are involved in it don't care about the fact that she lost her family. They care about a very specific thing that happened as a result. So to not make a good bridge, to steal your word, to not make a good bridge between that and make us feel like she's invested and the people that she's going up against would also feel that way. Like, you know, how Liam Neeson is really just going after his daughter, but it's a much bigger thing. You still, he goes in and saves other people and things like that. Like, he affects the plot as it moves forward, and he affects the story for everyone involved. She really didn't do that.
Her.
Exactly. So I think it kind of falls flat like that. If it would have been a bigger connection, I think it really could have been
even weirder too, because there's other characters involved who are like, I'm doing this story, I'm working on the story, but it's all about her.
Right.
Like you'll see, like, you know, it's like, here's 143 people died in this plane crash.
287, 293,
yeah, something like that. And then it's like, yeah, but we only care about these 3 people.
It's like, no one else cares that there's a whole conspiracy that is
like this reporter came just looking for her and no one else.
Right.
Like, no one else on that plane has surviving family, especially one that's not a junkie prostitute.
Right.
Kind of.
What?
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Of all the people, you're gonna like, and he did like his research was like, I know your real name is Stephanie. And it's like, wait, whoa. You did all this research on this one junkie? Like,
now,
which makes it unbelievable.
I think it's
and I gotta say, the beginning part is the part I liked the most about that movie.
Agreed.
It starts out as a movie that I'm like, I'm gonna love this. And then it kind of meanders on in different directions, which I do agree, like, it does not seem grounded. The way it goes about it does not seem grounded. And it's like watching it a second time, there were things I remember and I'm like, oh, right, this happens. And then there'd be like, oh, that was cool. I remember liking that a lot. But it's like one of those things, this was a movie that I liked, just like enjoyed. I enjoyed it. It wouldn't have made it wouldn't have made my best of list. It wouldn't have made my worst of list.
Gotcha.
Right. It's a movie I saw.
So Pete,
and now I've seen it twice.
Pete, I think it's safe to say this is off your radar. Matt, what, it's sort of on yours?
It's like one of those things where, like, I'd say it's worth watching.
Yeah.
For some of the visuals and some of the performances, it's worth watching. Don't beat yourself up about it if you don't get to it. If it's on your list, then it eventually leaves Netflix or wherever the hell it's off. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Don't break a sweat.
It is streaming on Amazon Prime. So if you are curious about it, I highly recommend you do so. But yeah, I just want to segue into our next film review because we're actually running low on time here. One Night in Miami. This was I was very entertained by this. It's the semi-fictional account of Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Malcolm X as they meet in a motel room one night in 1964 to discuss civil rights issues and the responsibility that each of them has as a successful Black man in America. I thought the performances were terrific. Everybody very convincing. I know it was based on a stage play, and you definitely get that impression here.
Yeah.
But it also it works as a motion picture as well. And I think Regina King in her directorial debut really knocked it out of the park. She won an Oscar, I think, last year or the year before, and now she's behind the camera and she's showing skill in front of and behind the camera. So I give her kudos on that one. It's just a fine film, also on Amazon Prime. But yeah, Pete, what did you think of this film?
So again, I like to look at everything from a historical point of view, but the first thing that popped out to me before I go down that route is the fact that this was definitely made for the play. So, growing up in New York, seeing plays when they're off Broadway as opposed to being a big Broadway production, this would have been something that I would have loved to see in a theater of about 250 people and super tight, super close, obviously not in COVID times, right? Like the fold out chairs, road, and you're sitting right that close to the stage and you're a part of it, because this is heavy dialogue and this is heavy emotion, and you have to be able to see their faces. You have to see what they're saying, what they're doing. I just grew up seeing plays like that. I love seeing, 4 or 5 man, no more than 10 people in a cast on a play on a small stage somewhere in the city, way off Broadway. And that's what I would have loved to see this in. As a movie, I think it still plays really well. And you have to keep in mind that this is not, this isn't Denzel's Malcolm X. This isn't Will Smith's Muhammad Ali, but it's more about the things that they're talking about, not how they're acting. And that's not to say they don't kill it. I mean, obviously Odom knocks it out of the park because he can sing just as well as Sam Cooke. And the rest of them do a great job, including, Jim Brown, like everybody in there. I think Aldous Hodge, right? I think he does a great job as well. Like, I remember seeing The Dirty Dozen and then watching Jim Brown movies throughout the years. So I was like, all right, so with that being said, I thought it was great from that standpoint. Then moving into the historical part of it, obviously a lot of this has to be kind of put together in terms of what was actually spoken about. But these are all things that, they were very passionate about. To talk about those last days, or maybe not those last days, but maybe that last year or so before Malcolm X is killed. He goes on his trip to, he does the pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, comes back, kind of starts his own thing, and then the conspiracy of whether or not the Nation of Islam killed him or not. And obviously, I believe they did. So kind of that writing on the wall, Muhammad Ali being pulled into it at a time where he was one of the most iconic young Black men who was right in that perfect age to be drafted into the war and would have been. I thought that was kind of crazy. And then I love the idea of showing Sam Cooke as the head of his own label, a young Berry Gordy in the making, and then again, now you have Jim Brown who's saying there's more to life than football. And if people are just going to, continue to treat me the way they are, which is they love me until they don't, I'm going to go ahead and get mine. So I really loved all of those different aspects. I loved the big conflict between Malcolm and Sam. This young, impressionable Muhammad Ali trying to figure out where he should go in between there. And then Jim Brown's pretty much like the old man who knows it all. He's like, listen, I know what I got to do. I know what I'm going to do to move forward, and I know what I'm going to do to continue to make my life better.
And that opening scene with Bo Bridges, oh my God.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to say it. Yeah, I was like, I can't even, but holy
Yikes.
You want to talk about something knocking you off of your seat. At that point, once it gets to that point, it's like bomb, 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 like everybody's bombing is the theme. Yeah. And then you're like, wow, well, this is nice. And, and I love Bridges, and then, woof, so. But again, from the historical standpoint, I thought it was great. I thought it captured the emotion of these 4 young men, young-ish. Some of them are older than the others. The tension of the time, the eyeballs that are being put on them, the directions that they're being pulled in. Sam Cooke making him look like this really, I want stardom, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
I just thought it was. I thought it was really well done. Again, I would love to see it on a stage if I could.
Yeah.
But I think Regina King did a great job of, zeroing it in and doing it, and that's it. It's fantastic.
And Pete, you sort of touched on something at the beginning of that. These 4 men, they're central figures in American history, and we often see them portrayed as like characters, like larger than life figures. But in this movie, they're kind of like like real people.
They're
4 guys.
It's them together.
Yeah.
As friends, so it's outside of the characters they have to play for other people, which
Right.
is great because you also see that, they show Ali's fight with Liston where, him being that like, yeah, I'm the best. And, they show that through the film. They show Sam Cooke dealing with, audiences. They obviously show, Jim Brown, in football and outside of football.
Right.
And, it's
very meta. It's very meta. It's themselves playing themselves. Like
it kind of reminded me a little bit of the HBO series Entourage, in a small way. Just the camaraderie and
I
friendship.
would much rather watch a series of this than Entourage. I mean,
never watched Entourage.
These characters are interesting as fuck.
That's
whereas the characters on Entourage are just 3 guys who hang out with a famous person.
Yeah.
I see what you mean about like who else can you really depend on? Like, I don't know enough about Entourage to make a bigger statement, but I see what you mean. It's like we're all we got. You know what I mean? And that's definitely the feeling you got from this, because obviously if there's one famous person, who else can you trust but your boys that you came up with? Mm-hmm. But with this, it's like the 4 of us are in very different realms, all of us.
And they found each other after like being famous. It's like
right. So these weren't people that knew each other before, but they knew that they could depend on each other to be discreet and things like that, as they're all becoming famous in very different ways, and Malcolm X becoming more infamous than famous. But the idea that they're all kind of blossoming into the big things that they're going to be at this time, you have to have somebody that you could talk to and have those conversations with. And that's another thing that makes it kind of meta when everybody's like, all right, you're not in front of the cameras, Malcolm, or Sam, you're not up on the stage. You don't have to be that guy with us, showing that there's layers to their personality. Like even when they're off the stage, but still have to feel like they're on, and then where they could completely be off. So that's why I'm saying you got like 3 different layers.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
right.
The movie.
Yeah, like there's a line
where
Sam says to Malcolm, where he's like, I know that guy. He's like, you're not that guy. Like I remember him. Like where it's like, it's like you've become this guy.
The movie humanizes these characters, these figures, and it's really refreshing to see. Pete, I'm curious. Again, same question about showing this to your students for a history lesson. Would you do it?
Only because of some of I would have to do some heavy editing on the things that are being said, but being able to see that performance of the self-sabotage between, and I don't think I'm giving too much away, because this is something, if you know anything about Sam Cooke, if you know anything about the Motown and the non-Motown people, there was heavy, even inside of that, there was a lot of competition. So the idea of kind of Jackie Wilson being the king of sabotage, that is something that's out there. Little Richard was known for doing things like that. And then, of course, there are a bunch of different, Jerry Lee Lewis was known for doing stuff like that. Like kind of, if you're going to go on after me, I'm going to sabotage you, or I'm going to.
Yeah, like Jerry Lee Lewis lit his piano on fire, which is
right
in Great Balls of Fire, actually.
Right. So
right before Chuck Berry went on or whatever.
Exactly. Like you're trying to follow this. So like, but seeing him do that, like get up on the stage and start everybody off, like. You could see how inspirational he was, even when he was still being that character. You could see how inspirational he was being and how he was trying to unify people, even with the character that he is. Yeah. Sam Cooke playing Sam Cooke, the big guy. But yeah, no. Historically, these are things that should be talked about, because these are 4 men, and specifically 2 of them, more important than the others in terms of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. That give you an insight into what Black people were suffering in this country at this time, no matter how famous they were. And again, I get that Jim Brown feels that as well, and I get that Sam Cooke feels that as well, but these guys still live in a completely different atmosphere, because Sam Cooke doesn't really piss anybody off, and neither does Jim Brown, whereas Muhammad Ali pisses everybody off, and he's one of the greatest athletes in the world, and Malcolm X pisses everybody off. But he's specifically a civil
rights. Definitely pissed somebody off because they murdered him.
Right.
Same year, I think.
So I think looking at that impact of how these guys felt before something like that happens, where Malcolm X dies, Sam Cooke drops, change is going to come. Yeah, I think to look at that point, if you're teaching the civil rights time frame, if you're teaching the Vietnam War, you're teaching the 60s, this should definitely be a look, or at least you should tell your students you should give this a watch and think about it in the historical context of what we're talking about in class right now. That
Right.
might just be something that I would suggest, but maybe certain pieces I could show and then go off on that tangent and say, this is why he says this and this is why he says that, because these are the things that are going on at that time. And they would definitely be a really cool way to segue into, during the Vietnam War, them trying to, the Viet Cong trying to talk black men out of fighting for America because
Right.
it's not your country and they don't care about you. So I thought that was really cool, even though they don't talk about it a lot. And that's Muhammad Ali's whole stance is,
Yeah.
why are we going over there as young black men fighting for a country that doesn't care about us when they don't even want to fight us and their beef isn't with us?
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay. All right. We have 1 minute left. But yeah, I'm assuming it's on all of our radars.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. And anyone curious, it is available on Amazon Prime. So check that out.
Also, I just want to mention, I didn't really get to talk about this because we talked about everything for a long time. But yeah, it's like one of those things that I'm usually pretty against a lot of biopics because of historical, and I'm really glad that they even say in leading up to it that it's a fictitious account, because the sequence of time in it is way off, being that this was actually the first night that Sam Cooke ever met Malcolm X.
Right.
Okay.
And also, like, the whole him starting a label thing happened way afterwards, after Alan Klein completely fucked him over, and all that stuff. And Change Is Gonna Come never even came out while he was alive. It was a song that he recorded that the studio would not release.
That I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
I think they took the second verse out of the song too, because it was about, like, black people, so they edited it. But there's a very good documentary on Netflix called The Two Killings of Sam Cooke.
Yeah,
it's only an hour and 4 minutes long or something like that. I definitely suggest checking it out, because it's the two killings being that he was murdered and set up, basically they had him murdered by a prostitute to make him also murder his character, they really treated him as just another black body. And it wasn't heavily, like, promote. It was just kind of like, yeah, another black guy died. But I definitely just suggest checking the movie out.
What's the name again?
The Two Killings of Sam Cooke.
Where is that available?
Netflix. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good to know.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
So we've got no time left, but real quick, Pete, any plugs, anything you want to mention?
No, go watch that documentary, because that's super interesting.
And The Crown.
And definitely The Crown, yes.
Cool. Matt, anything?
Cult Cafe Saturday nights, the Cult Cafe Not So Secret Society on Facebook. Find the group. This weekend we are watching Undefeatable, which is one of the best worst movies of all time, starring Cynthia Rothrock. It is a hoot and a holler.
Nice. And that's Saturday nights at 9:50 p.m. Eastern. Cool. And lastly, guys, on a more serious note, I just watched a new documentary called Hunger Ward, and it highlights starving children in Yemen and the awful, absolutely horrible plight that these kids go through and their families. Please, if you can, just visit hungerward.org. It's hungerward, WARD.org, and click the Get Involved button so you can donate to hospitals in that area. And if you want to see the film too, it's great. I believe it's available online. It's called Hunger Ward, and it is an extremely important situation that needs to be addressed. And if you can help out in any way, please do. So guys, I want to thank you so much. Pete, Ayala, thank you for coming back. I know it's been a while, but you're always welcome. And Matt, you know, the same goes.
I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you in a little bit.
Tomorrow.
But, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching at home and on your devices. I'm Randy Unger, and this has been Unger the Radar. We'll see you next week. Take care.